What's up, Infected? Welcome to the quarantine. This video is actually covering my top 10 through my number 6. If you haven't seen it already, I'll have a link to it here and in the description. That'll take you to my honorable mentions. I highly recommend pick those up. They're games that should be on my top 10 list but aren't for the reasons I'll state in the video. Definitely check those out. So let's just dive straight into the video. Alright, my number 10 is a game that I played over at a friend's house one time, and some of you, I did an unboxing for it, and if some of you may remember that, I played it once, and I was kind of iffy on it. I was like, that sounds like it might be weird because the wrong person kind of explained to me how to play, and it seemed super overwhelming. But then I played it and fell head over heels in love with this game. And that game is Mysterium. I love Mysterium. The core of the game is essentially Dixit meets Clue. And I love Dixit and I love Clue. Clue is one of the few mainstream games that I adore. I love Clue. Not top 10 quality, probably not even top 100 quality, but I love Clue. But Dixit is those two, the best of both of those games combined, where one player is the ghost and he or she isn't allowed to speak the whole game. And then everybody else has to use Dixit cards, which are real bizarre, and hopefully I'll have some pictures up here so you'll see. But you have these really bizarre pictures that I have to hand you, and you have to look at it and look around the board and figure out what the hell this weird card is supposed to represent. And each person has to narrow down their own person, their own place, and their own thing. And you only have a certain number of rounds to do this. Then once that happens, then you have a final showdown, and you have to figure out which one of those four groups of person, place, or things is actually the killer. All the while, the ghost isn't allowed to talk. You at the end, once everybody's made their decision and their guess, you'll hold up the card and go, "Is this my person?" And the ghost will knock once for no, twice for yes. And I'm sorry if that was a little loud. It kind of echoed in here. But twice for yes, once for no. That's all the ghost is allowed to do. So you're hiding behind your screen like this, screaming internally because you hear one person go, "Oh, I think it's this guy." And you're like, "Oh yes, guess that guy." And you're not supposed to give any visual cues. So you're hiding your face. And then they're like, "Oh, but it could be this." And you're like, "No, don't. You had it right." And it's a great game. I love the game. I don't think I've ever played a game of it that I didn't like. Super stressful, and my blood pressure goes through the roof when I play it, as the ghost anyways. But overall, the game is fantastic. I love Mysterium. All right, number 9. Well, my number 9 is going to be probably one of the more controversial ones, but that's cool. You can disagree with my decision. You're more than welcome to have your own opinion. This is my top 10 list. But I mentioned earlier I love Legendary Encounters, but it has the setup and teardown that's just insane. It takes 20 minutes to set the game up, or probably 10 to 20 minutes just to set the game up. And then I've actually had a game that you lost. It took you longer to set the game up than it did for you to lose the game, because the game is excruciatingly difficult. And I love that. I love that about Legendary Encounters. But, sometimes that's annoying, so you kind of have to reset some things, which takes, 4 or 5 minutes, and then you go, okay, let's do it again. And then when you tear down the game can take 10 to 20 minutes to tear down on top of that. And, there's ways to avoid it, but essentially that's the biggest flaw with the game. Now, this is probably my favorite deck builder, just hands down, for a variety of reasons that you may or may not agree with, and that's cool. But that game is Tanto Cuore. I absolutely love Tanto Cuore. It also has its problems, but in my opinion, I have every Tanto Cuore that's come out, and not to mention, I love the cute maids, and then some of the maids are actually lewd. And now, Tanto Cuore gets a bad rap, and they're like, "Oh, it's just sexy maids." Most of the cards aren't actually that sexy. Granted, there's quite a few, but most of them aren't. Most of them are actually very beautifully drawn. I love the artwork in the game. A lot of the maids are real pretty looking, just the artwork. And then some of them are kind of sexy. Namely, Beer Fest is probably the sexiest set that the game has. And the reason I like Tanto so much is, again, I think the artwork is visually appealing, but then the game itself it's a efficiency engine builder. My favorite thing that makes Tanto stand out over a lot of other deck builders is you buy a bunch of cards, you build your deck up, you get rid of the crappy cards, you just make your deck smaller again and draw through your deck essentially every turn, and you got the most efficient deck you could have. Tanto you can't do that because there's very, very, very few cards in the game that let you get rid of cards out of your deck. So every buy has consequences. You have to deal with, you can get this card that does nothing but gives you 8 points. Awesome. But then you have to deal with that card in your deck the rest of the game. And it's awesome. I love it. And then on top of that, with me having every set, you use some randomizers, and I don't think I've ever played the same game of Tanto Cuore. Tony Darling is in my opinion, one of the best cards in the game, but I think I've only gotten her twice in a game because there's so many cards, and you only use, I think it's something like 6 of them, or no, 8 of them, I think, in a game, and that's it. So it's just, there's so much variety, and it's such a good game. The only the problem that I have with the game is a lot of the cards that you can affect each other with, like I can give you an illness, or I can, give you bad habits, stuff like that. Some of those, the cost value on them seem a bit odd. For example, bad habits, I think cost 2, and you could just go, all right, well, I have 4 buys this turn. Let me just take these and throw them on you. Haha. I actually played against one guy that was his whole strategy was just to basically give everybody 4 bad habits every turn, and he just ran away with victory because of that. Now, we've house ruled like upping the cost, and that you can only buy 1 a turn regardless, and that seems to balance it out. But overall, it's my favorite deck builder. I adore Tanto Cuore. It's my favorite deck builder, and as you can see, I have the nice collector's edition box as well that holds everything all fancy like. All right, number 8 is a worker placement game, and it's a tiny little worker placement game that I probably spent more money on than I probably should have because it was super hard to find, and I've heard rumor that apparently it's coming out in the US or something along those lines. I don't know how truthful those rumors are or not, but I looked everywhere for this game when I first got it, and the game is Ars Alchemia. I love Ars Alchemia. It's probably the most aggressive worker placement that I've ever played. I've played quite a few. I actually really, really like worker placement games. But Ars Alchemia is so incredibly aggressive. It comes in a tiny little box like this big. I have the one from, I think it's Essen or Gen Con that they came out with that had English and Japanese, and I think I paid like $90 for it just because you could not find it anywhere, and probably way more than I should have, but I adore the game. The game is fantastic. I have everything sleeved, and we've played this game so much. And what I love about Ars Alchemia is you start out with a handful of workers, and then depending on if you go first, you only get 1 additional worker. But if you go last, you get a bunch of additional workers, and those are permanent. So there's a reason to maybe go last a few rounds so you can get more workers, and then you're effectively just doing more than everybody else. And what makes it even worse is if you went to this space and you say you put 2 workers there, I can go there, but I have to match the number of workers plus 1. So you put 2 workers there, I can go there and put 3 there instead, which kicks your people out. You've already done it because when you place your workers, you do the thing immediately. So you go there, you do your thing, I go there, I do my thing, or if I don't want you going there, I just put 5 dudes there. And now you have to pay 6 workers to be able to go there just because I didn't want you going there, because maybe if you do this you might be able to pull the victory from me. And the game is great. You're trying to get these alchemical ingredients to brew potions, to fulfill orders. You're trying to turn all this crap into like a basketball for some guy, and it's such a good game. I love it, and it's real small. It could almost fit in your jacket pocket. That's how small this game is, and I love Ars Alchemia so much. All right, number 7 is actually probably, I think, one of my newer games, come to think of it, and I actually just recently painted the miniatures, And I actually have a video of little clips of us playing this game. And so I'm just not even gonna beat around the bush. It's Fury of Dracula. I think it's the 3rd or 4th edition, whatever the new edition is. Never played the previous editions of Fury of Dracula, but I love the new edition. It's just a giant game of cat and mouse. So in the beginning of the game, you're Dracula and you feel super clever and you're giggling to yourself the whole game, and as you're secretly moving around Europe and you're laughing because everybody's moving off in the wrong direction and people are moving, and are you in this location? And you hesitate for a second and maybe pretend to look at some of your cards. No, I'm not. So then they think you're over there, you're misleading them, and everybody goes over that way, and you're giggling and you're like, yes, I've got this in the bag. And then something happens and they find out that you were actually way over here and that you've been lying to them the whole time. And then now everybody's on your trail. And once they're on your trail, it is so hard to shake the hunters, because now you're sweating bullets, because they get to do 2 actions to your 1, which granted there's, more to it than this, but they get to do more to yours. And it starts getting so stressful as you're now trying to shake their tail and maybe set up, you're trying to set up traps, and you're trying to lie and try to make them think you're moving over here. So, you put in storms over the ocean and then go out to sea, but you're not actually at that port. You're over at this port instead. So they start following you that way. And maybe you lost their trail, but maybe one person is just clever enough to see through your ruse and they find you again and they just start beating the crap out of you. And once it gets to that point, it is next to impossible to shake the tail. And it's such a good game. And as the game goes on, Dracula, of course, gets closer and closer to winning, and he's getting more and more points and everything, but combat gets harder and harder for Dracula. He's got to stay in combat for more and more rounds that he doesn't want to have to stay in, and just the game gets so tense and so stressful. I love Fury of Dracula, and I've played the last couple games. I've played with the advanced rules where you use the special powers, and I actually recommend don't play the base way. Always play with those, because it gives Dracula a chance. If you play the basic game, Dracula is at such a disadvantage, it's almost not worth playing. That is my number 7, Fury of Dracula. Alright, my number 6 is a game that I got probably, 8-12 months ago, something like that. And I don't remember when it came out, but when it first came out, I heard a lot of people talking about it and saying it was a good game, blah, blah, blah. And it's a game based on an IP, and I generally don't like games based on an existing IP, because it usually doesn't do it, or at the time I thought it's not going to do it justice, like when you play a video game that's based on a movie, or a lot of board games that are based on a video game or based on a movie. They're just not good. So when I heard about this game, which is XCOM the board game, I was a little hesitant to pick it up. And I wound up finally caved and was like, you know what, screw it. I'll go ahead and pick it up anyways. Worst case scenario, I know a buddy of mine that'll probably buy it off me. And I picked it up and adored this game. There's only one other game on my list that stresses me out in a good board game, like strategy sense of the word, stresses me out more than XCOM the board game. Because your best laid plans, there are dice in the game, but you wind up, that the odds are super against you. So, do you put 4 dudes on this mission so you can throw 4 of these crappy dice and hope for the best, or do you but maybe all your people die, or do you put a couple people in and hope the odds are with you, and then you have all your gear, and every roll, each person, it's a very asymmetrical game, fully cooperative, and each person has their own job they're doing, and you're shouting across the board, and it's real time, and somebody's like, you have 10 seconds to make this super hard decision, and people are arguing over across the board, and somebody's trying to keep track of how much money you're spending. And normally, I'm not a huge fan of real-time games, words, they're hard. Normally, I'm not a big fan of real-time games. But the way this one does it is, it does it so clean and so efficiently that, the problem with real-time games is a lot of times, am I following the rules right? I don't know, we'll just go with it, whatever. XCOM, you have 10 seconds to make a decision. Everybody else, they're not doing anything. They're looking through their cards, or maybe trying to help the person go, well, maybe you should do this, or keeping track of the budget. They're not doing anything that's also real time. So you have 10 seconds to make this decision. So we can help you out with that. But it also has that layer of tension because you only have 10 seconds. You're like, okay, which one of these? I'm gonna screw it, throw this down. We'll figure it out later. And that's what's so great about XCOM, the board game. They take that really annoying, kind of gimmicky, real-time mechanism, and they implement it in such a clean and polished way in the game that it's phenomenal. All right, and that was my number 10 through number 6. If you haven't seen it already, definitely click up there, check out my honorable mentions. I explain why they're not actually on my top 10. I'll probably also have something like right here that'll take you directly to my 5 through 1. I also have something up there in the corner and probably down in the description as well. So if you like my channel, definitely support me on Patreon. Any support would help. I'll have a link to it right up here. I appreciate any support you can give. I will have down in the comments my Twitch and my Twitter. That way you can follow my streams or interact with me on social media. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button down there and stick around. Make sure you leave a comment as well. I make sure I read every one of those. And I will see you guys next time in the quarantine.